a lot of people will turn on an automation to automate updating the client, right? Like there's been no change on your file. We're still working on it. We're still waiting for X. Like one of the prime examples is a trademark firm, right? Like they file your trademark application and now we're waiting 9 months for it to get approved. Nothing is happening during those 9 months. You know it, they know it, but there's, you're sending this automated email once a month or whatever, or text message once a month, right? Which is nice. It's okay, right? It could be annoying to the client. You'd have to ask and maybe turn it off for some, but do a non-automated touch point, right? Like once every 3 months, just pick up the phone and call the client, say, hey, just wanted to touch base. How you doing? And not even to like update them. Just say hi. I think that alone could make a huge difference. Well, hello and welcome to another amazing guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and as you can tell, my voice is awful because I'm recovering from a cold. You've already been warned in the last episode, and we've got 4 more to go because I batch our podcast episodes, so there's going to be 6 with my awful raspy voice. But we're still going to cover amazing content, so keep those earbuds in and just bear with it. Just know that whatever is bothering you with hearing my voice, it's bothering me more speaking my voice. Stacy Brown Randall is a past guest of the show. She was here in episode 25. We are past episode 500, so not to make you feel old, Stacy, but it's been a while since you were here on the show. Episode 25, Generating Referrals Without Asking with Stacy Brown Randall. You can find it at profitwithlaw.com/025 to easily go back and binge and listen to that episode if you want, before or after this one. She's a multiple award-winning author of Generating Business Referrals Without Asking, host of the Roadmap to Referrals podcast, and a national speaker. Stacy teaches attorneys and other business owners how to generate referrals naturally without manipulating, incentivizing, or even asking. She's been featured in national publications like Entrepreneur Magazine, Investors Business Daily, Forbes, and more. She received her master's in organizational communication and is married with 3 kids. And in full transparency, I have ripped off and stolen her method of doing things, and I teach it to my clients, not in a I'm selling her program kind of way, but our clients that we're supporting. I I tell this to every law firm owner that your number one marketing tool that you have is to build your referral network. Don't forget about other attorneys. Um, we tend to think of other law firms as competition, and even in the same practice area, they are not your competitors. They are your friends. I had an attorney on this podcast, and his name is Michael Duffy, and my team will link up in the show notes the episode. And his whole interview, he talked about how he built his practice. He has like 100-person practice out in Long Island in New York. And we had a whole conversation about his, how he got started, and they do med mal. And he built his entire practice going to other med mal firms and saying, give me your stinky fish, right? Give me the cases that you don't want, and I will take them, and then I will give you a piece of it when I win. And he just built his business off of that. Even the attorneys that are in the same line of work as you have potential referrals to send to you. They're conflicted out of the case. They it's too small for them. It's too big for them. There's always something that can have a two-way street. So there's a whole world of networking that you can do that's a lot easier than trying to find referral partners in other industries. And then you can have referral partners in other industries. So much business can come through referrals. I would venture to say that 100% of the people who are looking for a solution think about their network first to see if they know somebody who can refer them to somebody before they go to Google. When they go to Google, it's either because they struck out with their family and friends, or they couldn't think of somebody in their family and friends circle. And therefore, it's so important to have that referral network built, because it is the before Google area of your marketing. And there's no better person to talk about how to do this well and how to do it right than Stacy Brown Randall. And she has just released a new book, and that book is The Referable Client Experience. The Referable Client Experience is all about another domain of referral partners, which is your clients. And I'm really excited to jump into this conversation. So I'm going to shut up and let Stacy take it over. Stacy, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I feel like I've been on your podcast one other time since episode 25, but I'm old.
Um,
I'm old now, and I don't have
yeah.
the memory to actually know if that's true, but I feel like it may be true. But thank you
You
for
know
having
what?
me back.
While we're talking, I will figure this out. I was going off of the notes prepped by my team,
Yeah.
so they are human beings too. It's certainly possible. So we'll figure this out. Before we close out the show, we will clarify. I certainly know that we repeated your episodes. So we went through a period where we repeated episodes. We also repurposed some talks from Law Firm Growth Summits. You definitely have spoken at the Law Firm Growth Summit,
Yep.
but I will figure it out and I will let our audience know. But if they want to learn more about you, they can do that in episode 25. They can go and listen to that conversation. Let's dive right into this conversation of the referable client experience. Set the stage for me. Why is this so important to talk about? What are people getting wrong when it comes to the client experience?
If people could probably go back and listen to that original episode, more than likely, I probably made a disclaimer when I started talking about generating referrals without asking. And in that conversation, I said it for like a decade. I would always say, hey, here's how you get referrals without asking from people who've already referred you. That's what my first book is kind of about. It's like people who've referred you before. Here's how you get more referrals from them. That's not the only group of people you can get referrals from. It just happens to be the one that my first book is on. But anytime I was explaining the premise and the framework and the methodology of generating referrals without asking, whether I was talking about it from existing referral sources or potential referral sources, I always gave this disclaimer. And the disclaimer was, I'm assuming you are referable. And then I would go in and I would teach what it was they needed to understand about generating referrals from either existing referral sources or potential referral sources. And I realized that, you know what? Not everybody actually is referable or knows what it means to be referable. So I figured we probably should discuss that. So it was a couple of years ago, I started teaching this to my clients. So we've been teaching this for a number of years now to my clients. And I figured it was just about time for me to get another book out. And so that's why I chose to do it on this one, because it's almost like I'm doing my own version of Star Wars and I'm like going back, right? So, like, I told the end result story in the first book, Generating Business Referrals Without Asking. Here's how you generate referrals from people who've already referred you. But before you get to that point, we got to go back one step and be like, hey, let's make sure you're referable. So, the book is all about people understanding what a client experience is. Most people think they know, and then more and more conversations I have, I'm like, oh, most people are wrong, or they just only have half the definition. But it's understanding what the client experience is. It's understanding what makes you referable. People just think doing amazing work will make them referable. And that is only part of the story. And that's only part of the formula and the equation. So it's this idea that, hey, do you know what your client experience is? Do you understand what makes you actually referable more than just doing great work? And then teaching how to bridge the gap to generating referrals from your clients. Because the one thing that people always say to me, they're like, oh, I get a lot of my business from referrals. And I'm like, I hear that from everybody. I feel it's like a standard response that people say to me. And usually when I dig into their data, we realize that's actually not the case. But people will say, I do great work and I get some referrals. And I'm like, great. If you do great work, are you also, though, drowning in referrals? Are you getting so many referrals from your clients? And usually people are like, I do great work, but I'm not drowning in referrals. But they think that doing great work is what drives referrals. And it's not. You got to have more to that. You have to do more than that. There's another piece to the story. And so that's why the book exists. And it is now live for folks to go and be able to learn that.
Yeah, I think it intuitively it makes it makes complete sense, right? Like there's a difference between doing the work and the client experience. I'm just gonna talk about, I mean, everyday experiences like Walmart, right? Walmart might have the best prices in the world, but the client experience is awful, and I hate going into that store. So it doesn't matter if I'm saving money. I mean, the best thing that they did was create the ability for you to have it delivered to you or to pick it up in their parking lot because I don't have to step foot into the store and I can still get the thing that I need at a last, at fairly last minute. But if you do something well, it's so easy to get to a good client experience, right? Like there's just some extra steps you need to take and implement and processes you need to put in place to improve on that. And I would love to know your thoughts on what that is. But before we do that, we do have to have this correction go in. You are absolutely correct. And now I'm embarrassed because it was only a year ago. We had you on here in August of 2024, episode 443. The title is Transforming Your Law Firm's Referral Strategy with Stacy Brown Randall. You can listen to it at profitwithlaw.com/443 and listen to our last conversation. So you are correct. Your memory served you correctly, and you are not
Well,
um,
it's not a given.
not
It's
losing it.
definitely not a given.
So, but let's talk about what makes up a client experience. Like, is there a framework that you have for people to think of the client experience where they can up level their game?
Yeah, so first I want people to understand how we define client experience, and then I want you to understand the formula and the stages. And that is like a really good overview of the framework of how we look at our client experience. But you said something I just want to touch on. And you said like most people just they need to like upgrade or up level what they're doing. And you're absolutely right. Very rarely do I work with a client when I'm talking to a law firm where I'm going in and I'm like imploding their entire client experience. I almost never ever do that. I actually can't think of any time that I actually have. But what I usually do is look at what they are doing and then I show them areas where they can improve it, right? Areas where they can tweak it, where they're missing pieces. And that all comes down from the definition, the formula, and of course the stages. So the definition of the client experience, which a lot of people think is customer service, and it is not. Customer service is a part of your client experience. The client experience is defined as how your client feels while working with you. Well, think about the different types of law firms out there doing different types of legal work. How a personal injury client is going to feel doing work, right? Being a client of a personal injury law firm versus an intellectual property law firm, right? Versus a divorce attorney versus, a business attorney. Those experience, they're all going to feel different based on like what it is that's happening, right? And what it is they're going through. But the client experience is always going to be defined by how they feel. So a personal injury attorney may want their client to feel different than the business law attorney, right? Because of what they actually ultimately do. So it's not a one size fits all. Oh, we all got to feel good, right? We all got to feel cared for. I mean, that's like a standard, but there's things that the firm has the opportunity to differentiate itself by really paying attention to what are the emotions we want to evoke from our clients while they're working with us. And depending on what you do in a legal aspect, those emotions are going to look different. So first thing is understanding the definition. It's how your clients feel while working with you. The second thing to understand is the formula that makes a client experience actually referable. And that is one, yes, the work you do. You have to do great work, right? It has to be valuable. It doesn't need to be perfect, but you need to make, correct when things don't go well, communicate, expectation setting, having a little bit of a wow factor. Like the work you do matters. But the other piece that most people ignore is the relationship you build. And I don't mean like having 45-minute conversations with every single client every single month. That's not what I mean. I mean, there are outreaches or what we call touch points that you can do with your clients that extend the work you're doing from a relationship building perspective or are just solely focused on relationship building. So the formula says you got to have both, right? You got to have your work touch points plus your relationship building touch points. That is what makes you referable. But how you deploy those work and relationship building touch points is dependent on the stage your client is in. And there are three client stages, and that is new client stage, active client stage, and alumni client stage. Now, there are some folks that don't ever have their clients move to the alumni stage, right? Like, which I'm sure you like want your clients to work with you forever. So you want to keep them around. They don't ever go from active to alumni, which is what I call past or previous clients. They stay inactive and then the active becomes the ongoing. And so, from that perspective, it's understanding what's happening in the new stage, the active stage, and then also the alumni stage that is really making sure that you are being intentional about how your clients feel so that you have opportunities to build relationships and, of course, bridge that gap to referrals. And that's really important from a framework breakdown is it's defining it correctly, it's understanding the formula and recognizing what your clients go through each of those three stages and making sure that you're doing the work. Plus, in my case, what I'm really focused on is I'm assuming you're doing the work well. I'm really focused on those relationship building touch points.
So how do we start improving those touch points? Like where uh, and as you were talking about this, I was thinking about, so many firms are like trying to just get those client testimonials on Google, right? Those Google reviews. And it's almost like if you solve this problem, then attaining Google reviews changes completely, right? Like, so instead of asking for a Google review, you can share with them how Google reviews helps the firm, and clients who have had the most amazing experience are doing that on their own, right? Like, you don't even need to ask for it. You just need to kind of set the stage with a story about it, because if you fix the experience, you've created this situation where, they just want to, because they want to, like, well, how else can I help you? Because I loved working with you. So what, like, in the first phase, how do we actually improve the client experience? And I know it's different from practice area to practice area. So how do we think about that based on what our clients are doing? You said it's, how do they want to feel emotionally, but how do we know how do they want to feel?
Yeah, so let me back up for real quick and kind of tackle that testimonial online review question that you have. So, you're more likely to get online reviews and testimonials when your clients love working with you. We all know that, but it actually won't remove the need to ask because people just get busy and they forget no matter how much they absolutely adore working with you. It's the same thing when it comes to bridging that amazing client experience to actually receiving referrals. There are different things you need to do because your clients just don't think like that, right? And that in the case of like wanting to leave a review, some will do it, yes, just like some will refer. But what we're talking about is looking at it from that perspective of delivering on that experience so that yes, they're more willing, but they're probably still going to have to be nudged to do the online reviews, to leave a testimonial, and from that referral perspective. And part of that framework is just how we teach that, particularly from the referral piece, as we move it through the entire client experience. The idea with particularly with referrals and bridging the gap to referrals is that idea of like letting it percolate throughout the entire client experience, but doing it in a way that is like subtle, but also it's subtle, but also doesn't overtake the objective of what we're doing in the moment with that client experience. So I do want to kind of acknowledge that. But what you asked about is like what are clients feeling, depending on the practice area, right? What are clients feeling as they move through those stages? And here's the thing I always tell my clients. You know what your clients are feeling, or you should know what your clients are feeling. And if you don't know, you may have to ask. But most of the time, if you sit with the question, what is it like to work with you? And you put yourself in your client's shoes and you pretend, even if you just do this in your mind, you like pretend so the way I've always looked at it is I pretend I just hired Stacy, right? I just put down a chunk of change, right? It is not a dollar to work with me. And the immediate reaction that we know that is going to happen because it's what psychology tells us and some of the science tells us is the decision that we make in the new stage, your client is going to go into a period of buyer's remorse, whether it's fleeting or it's long term. It is very normal. It is a natural thing that happens in our brains when we make a decision and we put money, time, and energy behind it. So you know your clients are saying yes to you, which means they're probably saying no to others, or they're saying yes to a bunch of work because working with you means they have to do things, right? So pay attention to what you ask of your clients. Pay attention to why your clients come to you in the first place. That informs what they're feeling the minute they say yes to working with you. The thing that I want folks to understand is that what you're trying to overcome in the new client stage that is on that relationship building side is overcoming what I call the quiet voice. It's all the things running through your client's head that they're concerned about or worried about or have anxiety around, but they haven't yet verbalized to you. But they're judging you, right or wrong. We were told not to judge, but we all do it, right? They're judging you based on the quiet voice in their head and how you're meeting that. But they're never speaking the quiet voice to you. It's why it's called the quiet voice. It lives in their head. So let me give you an example. So when I used to be a productivity and business coach, I knew when a client said yes to working with me, they were going to actually have to change. They were going to, if they wanted working with me to be valuable and to have some like lasting impressions, right? And some lasting impact, they were going to have to be willing to work and to change. And that is hard. And so I would always send as one of my relationship building touch points when a client said yes to working with me as a productivity coach, I would always send what we called it's not a welcome card, right? It's so much better than a welcome card. A welcome card is like, hey, thanks for being a client. We're excited to work with you. That's fine if you do nothing else, but we sent what's called a journey card. And I would encourage all of your listeners to start incorporating this into the work that they do, regardless of the journey that client's about to go on. But in my journey card, I would always say, hey, I'm excited to work with you. I know working with me is going to stretch and challenge you, and it's not always going to be easy, but you're not alone. I am your co pilot. We're going to take this journey together. It spoke directly to their quiet voice of, okay, yep, I know this is going to be hard and it's going to challenge me and it's going to stretch me. And do I really want to do this? Okay, but I've got Stacy's got my back and she knows me and she sees me. And that's really important. And that is done with like, $1.50 card and stamp. Right. So it's not a very expensive thing to do here to really extend that relationship with your client to show them that you see them where they are in that stage. That's really important in the new client stage, like seeing them where they are in that moment of buyer's remorse, the quiet voice, and all the things they're worried about. And so that's one way I always tell folks, you know what your clients are going through. You probably never thought about it. Maybe you need to sit and reflect on it, right? And that's really important. We have a workbook that goes along with the new book, The Referable Client Experience. And that's one of the things I actually ask, like in the workbook, where like, just take a minute and reflect on this page of like, what do you think your clients feel when they're working with you? And every industry kind of has a few standard things, right? From a legal perspective, there's probably a nervousness about what's going to happen and the uncontrollables, right? You're changing to a new financial advisor. It just feels like a whole bunch of work because it's a whole bunch of work to move your assets over and sign all the paperwork. And then all these statements start showing up at your house. You get a bunch of mail. Like there's all these things we know when a client says yes to working with us that's about to happen. I want you to be able to articulate that and be able to make sure that your clients know that you know it's happening, but do it in a way that drives the relationship forward.
I love the idea of the journey card. And I also just, as you were explaining all of this, I thought about this. We have anticipated buyer's remorse, right? So we have our elite coaching program. Somebody spends $25,000 with us, right? They're making a commitment to work with us for a year. And when somebody joins, we immediately reach out to schedule a kickoff call, and we also send out a box. And in that box, I send some books that I want them to read, and I send some swag from our business and a welcome letter. And I've been adamant with my team that it needs to go out the day they sign up, if at all possible. Obviously, if they sign up at 4 in the afternoon, that's not going to happen. But I want it next day air. I want them receiving it the following day because I want it to be in their hands immediately after they sign up as quickly as possible because of that. Because when they get that and they have something tangible and something to look at and something to start off with, it really changes the dynamic. It helps to shut off that voice. But I realized that kickoff call that they're trying to schedule, we don't have like a parameter in place for how quickly they reach out to the client. And I feel like that's an area where we can improve, where we can, make sure that we call them within an hour of joining, or something like that. So, really kind of just accelerate how that's happening. And then I love thinking about the overwhelm also because we've heard it from our clients. Like, I don't know where to start and I don't, like I'm overwhelmed. There's so much here. And so I love the journey card. I love the idea of just showing them like, hey, there's a lot there, but this is actually going to happen in this time frame, and this is the steps we're going to take, and here's where you start. So that's something I'm going to implement after this recording. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not going to be in five
So to
minutes,
make
but
that even easier for you, I would also tell you check out the expectation map. So we dive into that in chapter 4 in the book, and that's a visual representation of what your client has coming. And that, for most of my clients, and I know it has been for me, is a game changer. The ability to take, hey, this is what it looks like to work with me, and put it in like a Candyland type board game, one-page PDF document that's colorful. I mean, colorful, I don't mean like childish, right? I just mean like something that's like, hey, here's what it looks like visually to work with me. I think the statistic is like 64% of most adults are actual visual learners. That's like over 50% of learners learn visually and remember things better when they see it visually versus just hearing it or reading it in bullet point form. So a lot of times I'll have clients be like, well, we send an email and it bullet points out, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. I was like, great. What if you did that and you attached this one-page PDF that was an expectation map from a start to finish that was like, hey, here's actually what it's going to look like visually to go through the process of working with us. And you don't have to do the entire client experience. Maybe it's just the first 90 days. Here's what to expect working with us. You can do it differently depending on what works best for your business. But as much as you can manage the expectations and kind of almost let your clients know what their expectations should be, really helps the entire client experience overall.
Awesome. I'm going to take a brief moment here just to talk about this one thing for us. Folks, if you're thinking like, okay, this is great, but like, when do I implement this? Like, do I need to be at a certain size? And the truth is that everything that you do to improve is going to be exponentially better if you're improving on a grander scale, right? So if you're operating as a solo and you're trying to grow beyond yourself and you really need to make that jump, then that's something that you definitely want to figure out how you can make that happen. And it doesn't have to take a long time. As a matter of fact, we help attorneys go from solo to a million in 12 months. That's the journey that we help them take. So if you want to have a free strategy session with somebody on my team to talk about how you can do that with your firm, then you want to book that call, profitwithlaw.com/strategy session, and sit with us and spend 30 minutes to help us navigate and just draw that path for you. And if it makes sense for you to join and work with us, then you can do that. And when you're operating at a level of a million plus, then the stuff we're talking about with Stacy is going to have a much bigger impact than it will when you're operating small. So if that's the vision for you, you want to grow beyond yourself, then you definitely want to jump and take advantage of that call. Stacy, so we covered the beginning of that relationship, right? Somebody signs up. We want to avoid the buyer's remorse. We want to get them going on the right path. We want to create some clarity on the journey. Where's the next best area to focus to improve the client experience after that?
Yeah, so after the new stage is done, they move into the active stage. And depending on what you do, they can be in the active stage for a very long time. And so it's recognizing what your client feels when the work for you, you're behind the scenes doing all the work. Right. But your client maybe isn't participating in any of that. So, most people, when the client enters the active stage, the things we have to pay attention to is what I call the lull of complacency and playing the waiting game. So your client may be playing the waiting game because they're just waiting for the next thing to happen or for you to tell them something or something to show up, right? Or them to need to do something or them to be informed about something. So you get lulled into complacency because you're behind the scenes doing all the work and you got multiple clients, right, at multiple stages and multiple steps in the client experience, depending on when they started working with you. So you see it as like, my plate is full. I got all these clients I'm doing with, and I got all these clients in the active stage and a couple in the new stage. But your client is an individual, right? And obviously, the good clients are like, I'm probably not the only client, right? They recognize that, but it's that whole place where you get lulled into complacency and they are now playing the waiting game. And so the next place that you can really kind of, what I always tell folks, if you had like one or two, and each stage you had like one or two, maybe in the alumni stage it would be more like three or four relationship building touch points that just showed up to show your client, I see you. That would go so far for your client to be like, wow, I didn't see that coming. Showing up in the waiting game and letting the client know they're in the waiting game is really important. And that's above and beyond that maybe you're sending a monthly email. Like when people are in any of my programs, whether my VIP client or they're in my coaching program or they're in my accelerator, there's a monthly email that goes out, right? Or if they're in my extension program, the master's program, there's a monthly email that goes out where I'm like staying in front of them. But for some of them, right, they could be in that for a couple of years, which is great. They're going to work with me for a couple of years. At some point, those monthly emails become a little more routine than, oh, new email from Stacy. And I know they've entered the waiting game, even though they're doing the work and seeing the results. So it's just kind of acknowledging that and recognizing that and doing some things different. Like one of the things I do, and I don't, not everybody needs to do this. This is a cost, this could be cost prohibitive for a lot of people. But one of the things that I started doing is bringing all my clients together once a year for a retreat, and they don't pay to attend. Now, if they're an alumni client, they may pay to attend, but they are able to come every December. We spend 2 days together in December. They just have to get themselves to Charlotte. That's where I am, so that's where they're held. And for 2 days, I just take care of them, and we work on their business. And then we work on their referral strategy for the next year. And that's one thing that I do to kind of create that additional wow factor is like, hey, I don't have to do that. I'm definitely not making any money doing that other than the fact that they're clients. That's definitely costing me money. But it's one of the things that I know I can do where I can extend the connection and I can extend the relationship building. And it works with my model and how I like to run my business. So it's just looking for things when you know your clients are in the waiting game. What are the things that you can do to show up to say, hey, I see you. I get that. We know you're in the waiting game. And I definitely mean not in an email saying the words, we know you're waiting. We're doing behind the scenes doing all these things and we know you're waiting. Like show up differently. And that's really important. And that's going to happen in the active client stage.
Yeah, I think even something as simple as I tell my clients all the time, communication is so paramount when it comes to the client experience, right? Like if you set a deadline, you have to communicate if that deadline's going to be missed. You have to communicate if that deadline needs to move. But also, a lot of people will turn on an automation to automate updating the client, right? Like there's been no change on your file. We're still working on it. We're still waiting for X. Like one of the prime examples is a trademark firm, right? Like they file your trademark application and now we're waiting 9 months for it to get approved. Nothing is happening during those 9 months. You know it, they know it, but you're sending this automated email once a month or whatever, or text message once a month, right? Which is nice. It's okay, right? It could be annoying to the client. You'd have to ask and maybe turn it off for some, but do a non-automated touch point, right? Like once every 3 months, just pick up the phone and call the client and say, hey, just wanted to touch base. How you doing? And not even to like update them, just say hi. And I think that alone could make a huge difference. It doesn't need to be an event and a big expense like Stacy's doing, where you can make a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I recognize that sometimes people in their quest to like do the big wow, right? So maybe my retreat was probably a terrible example for this, but it worked really well for me and I know other people who do it too. But the idea is that they look for the big wow before they really realize what they should be putting into place that just makes the experience incrementally better, right? So like looking for those incrementally improvements before you feel like you've got to like do the big one. So this is one of the examples that always comes to mind when I think about this. So my husband and I belong to a gym, and I remember one day we walked into the gym and there was a big sign out front that was like $60,000 in new equipment has arrived. We're investing in you and your health. And I remember looking at like reading the sign, oh, $60,000 in new equipment, and looking at my husband and being like, that's great, but I would just love it if the water that came out of the water cooler could actually just be cold instead of lukewarm. Like that would actually improve my client experience if the water could just be cold, right? That comes out of the water fountain. And I remember my husband like laughed. He was like, "Yeah, isn't that the truth? Like, thanks for the 60,000, but couldn't you have taken like maybe 5,000 of that and go fix the water? Like that would have been an
Probably
improvement."
only cost you $150 to fix the water.
Well, right. I mean, maybe I'm being overly generous that it's like $5,000. And I remember one time I went to a staffer and I was like, what is up with the water? I was like, are you guys aware that the water comes out lukewarm, which is kind of gross when you're working out? And I want it to be cold. And they're like, oh, yeah, they're aware. And I was like, and, but we got $60,000 in new equipment that, most of us don't use. But I was like,
Yeah.
okay, great. So that's my thing is like, don't overlook the small things that need to be fixed and solved and upgraded before you decide to try to do some big wow. And you may not ever need a big wow. Sometimes it's the small things that accumulate into the wow. And sometimes the little things that are done just right at the right time feel like big wows. So, I always tell my clients, nobody has a one size fits all client experience. I don't come to my clients and I'm like, here, you have to do this, this, and this, and here's your 6 touch points we're going to add. And everyone I've talked to is doing the same. All of them are different, and it's based on the firm, the personality of the firm, what works in the budget, and what will make the biggest difference.
Yeah, and a great example, and I love that. I think one other thing that we can think about is if you're not sure what you should be upgrading, just ask your clients, right? Ask somebody you're working with. Say, hey, I hope that you're enjoying your client experience with us. If there was something that we could improve, what would it be? It's
What
a
would it
simple
be?
question,
Mhm.
but that's how you find out about the lukewarm water, right? Like that's how, if you want to improve, that's how you find out about where the areas of that need improving are. And everybody's experience is different. So don't just talk to one, got to talk to many. But you have those conversations and start asking for what are those areas of improvement. And as you start improving things, guess what? People are always going to have something you can improve.
Oh,
It doesn't go away, right? They're always going to have an opinion. So you can continuously improve if you just have that as part of your process, part of your system. We're unfortunately out of time. The good news is that you can actually get the rest of the information that we didn't cover on this podcast in Stacy's new book, and we're going to link that up in the show notes for you. Again, it's called the Referable Client Experience, and you can find it on Amazon. It's already out. It was released on October 23rd, 2025. But it's according to the PDF sheet in front of me.
right.
This
Technically the
episode
21st.
this
Yeah,
episode
technically
will
the 21st.
this episode will be out already. I mean, we're recording this on the 21st, so I'm like, that's
Right.
why I'm looking at Stacy. I'm like, I know that's in the future, but
Right.
this episode will be released after the 21st and after the 23rd, so it will be out. The Audible version is already out. Go download it, listen to it, get the book, hold it in your hands, read it. Her stuff is amazing, and I highly, highly recommend that you go through it and start to just take some baby steps in improving and implementing. Stacy, as we wrap up the show, you know how I close it out. Last parting piece of advice or wisdom for the listeners, and if they want to learn more besides for buying the book about you, your programs, and getting firsthand help with you, what steps should they take to do that?
Yeah, first thing I would say is get really clear on what your client experience looks like now, because more than likely you don't need to do a ton of things to improve it. You just need to do a few key things. And of course, you will learn those inside the book, The Referable Client Experience. But don't read the book and not do the exercises, because you need to know where you're starting from, because it makes making improvements that much easier. So that's one thing that I would say. And of course, if people are interested in working with me after they read the book, of course, I have a podcast. I have my first book has been out for a few years, Generating Business Referrals Without Asking. But just go to stacybrownrandall.com. How you can work with me is right there on the homepage. Make it really nice and simple. If you want to generate referrals, take control of your referrals in your own way, in the way that works for you, and do it without asking or compensating or manipulating, then that's what I do. I do that all day long with my clients, and I'd love to work with anyone else. To just go to stacybrownrandall.com and learn more.
And I'm sure she covers this in the book, but one parting piece of advice that I'll leave is from my friend Craig Goldenfarb. He has a box that he gives out to referral partners, to past clients, all of that, and he calls it the How to Refer Us box.
No,
And in that box,
I am not going to give that advice.
he
No.
basically he sends swag, and he sends stuff like that out to the clients, and and shares that. And maybe this is not Stacy's advice, but people also need to know how to send you a referral, right? And it's not asking for the referral. It's it's this is how you do it. And you can share that with them, and I think that it makes a big difference in their experience of wanting to refer somebody to you, because otherwise they're like, oh, I don't even know where to start. So that's something you might want to consider. All right, folks, we are here every single Thursday with a brand new episode. We are past 500 episodes. There is a ton for you to listen to in the archives. Really amazing stuff. And I cannot tell you enough the value of being a subscriber here on the show. If you're not a subscriber, hit the subscribe button. You get notified every Thursday when we release a new episode, and we have amazing conversations like the one we just had with Stacy. This was incredible, and she always brings a ton of value. So appreciate having you here, folks. We'll see you next week on our next amazing guest interview. Take care. Have a great day.